All right. Welcome to my first book talk. So today we're going to go through some books that I've read over the last year or so, and they're really interesting because they've got different themes this time. And one of the bits about each of these books is they've really either brought something to my life or my understanding of myself. So the first book is The Enneagram, written by Helen Palmer, and it's really about understanding yourself and the others in your life. So the Enneagram is a system describing personalities, and it goes for 9 types of personalities in a very interesting diagram. It's based on Sufi mysticism, which is a mystical form of Islam, and it's been used for thousands of years now to help people to understand the different personalities they have and where they can fall short or where they need to go to evolve. So it can help you understand yourself from the perspective of where you're at right now and the directions you need to head in. And it's ordered in this diagram here. So if you can see there, that little star-shaped thing. And what it helps people to understand is, so you actually start off at a basic point. So I'll try to find an actual diagram so people can see. But what you see is you see all these different points, right? So for example, you can have my personality type is number 8, I believe it was. It's called the boss. So what ends up happening is my personality will evolve over time, and one of the biggest traits that enable my personality to develop is the idea of adopting innocence. And this is really profound for me because we often hear about astrology or numerology as these ideas of understanding human beings, but to see the Enneagram as something where people are divided up not based on their birthday or fixed characteristics, but based on traits that are often fluid throughout their lives. So how they communicate, the issues they come across. Each of these numbers has a different issue related to it. Some are anger, some are lust, some are incompetence or impatience in their day-to-day lives. And what you can see is that as someone develops and evolves, they move into this almost hybrid between 2 personality types. And sometimes you can have subtypes too, but definitely something to read, especially if you want an ancient way of understanding yourself and your personality. Next on the list is Sexy Millionaire, written by Steven Bartlett. Now, Steven Bartlett's rise to fame is something that coincided with social media and something that really took the younger generation by storm. He's most well known today for the Diary of a CEO podcast, but that wasn't how his career started. It started setting up a social media agency back in the days when Instagram was just really kicking off. You know, having @, like @Steven or @LoveFood really empowered his career, but he talks about timing, opportunity, hard work, grit, and perseverance as these real traits that enable someone to go from where they are now to where they want to go. But he often talks about the materialistic desires we have. You know, I think in his first sort of dreams or his goals he wrote out, he said he wanted a hot girlfriend, a nice car, and £1 million. And then as he arrived there, and also I think he said he wanted a nice body, randomly came to my mind. But when he actually arrived there, he realized that he was more miserable than ever before, and he had all these things and he felt quite trapped by them. And I think this is really a testament to the way generations have set goals for themselves. We think that when we arrive that somehow we're going to be happier and we're going to be more fulfilled than actually enjoying the journey. But one of the most profound bits of the book, he talks about his business partners and his friends when they all lived together. And he talks about how one of his business partners often went through a stint of very severe alcoholism and was absolutely miserable throughout the time that they were pursuing their ambition of building a business. And it really opened my eyes to the fact that even if we know we want something and we're willing to do the work to get there, sometimes what we want might not be right for us. So a great book to understand some of those secrets for success, as well as understanding that the journey of entrepreneurship, the journey of building a business or building your dreams is definitely something that's individual. It's something that we shouldn't wait for the destination to be happy. We should find meaning and really find joy in those moments that it takes us to get there. This book was a real life changer for me, Time Mastery. Now, everyone talks about time management and they try to understand that time management is a way of making sure you're really efficient with your days and you get as much done as possible. But Karen and John, who wrote this book, are partners in a business where they go into corporates like Google, Microsoft, Amazon to discuss their model for what they call time mastery. They move away from the very linear idea that you need to do a set thing every day and have a set routine. They talk about having a time rhythm. Every one of us has a rhythm in our day-to-day lives. Whether we know it or not, there's a specific time of day that we naturally tend to wake up. There are specific activities that often position us for success if we do those things first in the day. But those rhythms go from the rhythm of a day to the rhythm of a week to the rhythm of a month and then a year. And what we need to do is find that rhythm for ourselves and learn to really go with the flow. So for me personally, that's that understanding that I'm usually very active, very productive during the summer months. And then when it gets to the winter months, it's a period of reflection, a period where I can sort of sit with myself and think about what needs to happen, but also reflect on the period that's happened throughout the summer. But on top of that, time mastery for me was really eye-opening because rigidity in routines doesn't lead to success. It's understanding yourself and having that self-knowledge to know where the time sinks are in your life. For years, I would spend time wasted on very simple things. It could be doom scrolling or spending frivolous times just hanging about or literally watching TV and eating for the sake of wanting to do something. But through time mastery, I really began to understand that time is the only currency that matters. You can make money back, you can rebuild relationships, but you can't make a single second back. And if we had that knowledge, I think we would all live our lives very differently. Next book, a very, very interesting book, and by someone that I actually really respect, both his authorship and the stuff that he teaches. So Scott Galloway writes about the Four. Now, as you can probably see from the logos, he's talking about Facebook, now Meta, Google, Amazon, and Apple. These four companies, all worth trillions now, have all managed to take the world by storm. Most people spend all day on Meta's platforms, whether that's WhatsApp, Instagram, or Facebook. We're on Google, whether that's searching or whether that's watching YouTube videos. And now with AI tools, we're on these platforms more than ever. Amazon became the everything shop. Online, if you go on Amazon's website, you can find anything you want. And Apple managed to get us into a closed ecosystem of products, iPhones, iPads, MacBooks. And we're very content with these four companies really running the majority of our lives. Special shout out to Microsoft, who's missing from that list. But The Four is a book about how these companies managed to become these megalithic giants that we see today. They've become institutions, in some ways more powerful than governments. And he talks about quite well how they managed to sell a story. All of them managed to sell an idea as a story that took investors by storm. So people just kept throwing cash at them. Imagine I came to you and told you that I was going to make the shop for everything. You'd be able to access it through a website on the internet, and you'd be able to buy whatever you wanted at the same cost as what you were going out in the shops to buy. You'd throw your money at me, and that's exactly what happened with Amazon, for example. You see how big tech in Silicon Valley really rose up by selling stories that they were going to be able to do what others couldn't. They were going to use the internet and technology to create businesses that were in essence timeless. And throughout our generation, we've seen that year on year. The one thing I find really fascinating about the book is it's very rare that we get to see companies broken down in hindsight with such clarity, especially when these companies are so relevant to the generation we live in today. In a lot of ways, he helps to give us an idea of how techno-feudalism even became a thing. The idea that technology companies have really ended capitalism and now they are the best places to work, they're the best products to consume, and we don't really have a choice in the matter. The next book is by quite a famous social media influencer, but also a really powerful psychologist, Dr. Julie Smith. Now, it's a book called Why Has Nobody Told Me This? The book's about how can we get better take care of ourselves and our mental health. Those really small things we can do every day when we're feeling depressed or when we're feeling anxious, and how to participate in our relationships as not to sacrifice our mental health. Again, I wasn't someone who was a massive fan of understanding myself through therapy, despite actually going into it. And I really began to see in the book that practical steps and taking action in your life, especially consistently, was the simplest way of managing your mental health. When we think about why mental health falters sometimes, we think about, all the reasons in the world, whether that's the weather, the amount of sunlight we're getting, the food we're eating, the exercise we're doing, or we think about the things that could be wrong with us. We label ourselves with depression, anxiety, or other such mental health issues. very rarely do we think about the immediate quick wins. Instead of thinking about all the days we didn't exercise, we don't just get up and go for that walk. Or when we think about all the days we forgot to drink enough water, we don't just start drinking water from that moment onwards. And I think the book for me is a really big testament to how do we start to take small actions that have an outsized impact on our mental health for every type of mental health issue we could have. Whether that is depression or whether that is anxiety, we can all do something in that moment to make ourselves feel better. But sometimes taking rest and being able to sit with those negative feelings is the real skill, something that I'm still learning every day. The final book is Doing Good Better by William McCaskill. Now, William McCaskill is one of the leading intellectuals and public thinkers on this idea of effective altruism. How do we do good better? This is a question I really grapple with in my life. When I think about what is a good human life, I think about humans who are willing to do good and serve others. Oftentimes, I think, especially in the West, we live quite selfish existences. If you've got a British passport, an Australian passport, a Canadian one, or an American passport, you're one of the most privileged citizens on the planet. Yet, we often spend our lives squandering it away in hopes of greater financial rewards or living our self-interested desires or dreams. Effective altruism is a movement about how do we reduce suffering for all beings on this planet, whether that's ending factory farming for animals or whether that's getting malaria nets distributed to sub-Saharan Africa. These questions, I think, are important for our generation because we live in a time of the utmost abundance. Whether we think about our access to food, our access to water, the security and safety that we can rely upon. It's the first time in human history where we can see life expectancy increasing and we can see the quality of life across the world generally rising. So effective altruism for me is a real movement, and a movement where we can talk about issues like AI safety, AI ethics, alongside that look at food insecurity or how do we improve global public health. But this book really helps to understand how to best utilize your life and your career in a direction that could do good and understand the rationale behind it. Human minds really thrive off understanding the logic behind our decisions. And this book helps to give you a bit of perspective on the philosophy and the mindset required to live a life that does good, not just for yourself and not just for your community or your loved ones, but for the world at large.